The Babylon Project was our last best hope for Scott. A self-contained podcast, 1 hour long, located on the internet. A place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere. A shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon podcasts. The year is 2014. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hi, Babylon 5 fans. This is Jim and Raul. Again, we are here for another exciting episode of the Babylon Project podcast. Jim, how are you doing this evening?
Doing real good. And rip-roaring ready to go.
Okay, how much are you going to pay me to edit that one out?
No, leave it in. We're real people, you know.
Oh, gosh. Mind War was very much a favorite episode, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Wow, it was the first of the major Star Trek crossovers.
Yes.
We get Walter Koenig playing Alfred Bester.
Alfred Bester, completely and totally different than his role on Trek as Chekov.
Very much so. In fact, this really was the role that broke the mold for him. And who else do we have? Julia Nixon returns as Katherine Sakai.
Yep.
Another one of my favorite characters. And who else?
Felicity Waterman as Kelsey.
You know, apparently she's a known quantity, but for some reason I'm not that familiar with her.
Neither am I. There are two notable films that she was in. La Femme Nikita was one, and then Die Hard 2 was the other.
Okay, and last but not least, and sort of the major character of this particular episode.
Yes, William Allen Young as Jason Ironheart.
And he did... Okay, I'm gonna have to put a disclaimer up front. He played the character perfectly.
Yes.
But I still found... not the actor, but the character annoying somewhat. And we'll get into that.
Yeah,
I have to put this disclaimer up. I have to put this disclaimer up in front before we get too far in, because I'm not dumping on the character. So, Ironheart fans, please don't take offense here.
Right.
We're having fun with we'll be having fun with the character.
Yes.
So, you want to go ahead and step right into the summary so we can get into the details of the show tonight?
Okay, let's do it.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
In the opening scenes of Mind War, Earth fighters confront a stolen transport. The fighters appear to be the same as Earth Force fighters, but have the Greek letter Omega on their hull. As the fighters attempt to stop the transport, there is a bright flash of light. When everything clears, the fighters are gone, but the transport moves on. Later, the transport obtains permission to dock at Babylon 5. Two people, a man and a woman, arrive on the station, both dressed all in black with black gloves. They approach a security officer who asks for their identicards. The couple seems to be communicating telepathically as the man hands over his card to the officer. On the card is the same Omega symbol that was on the fighters. The officer says that he will personally take them to Sinclair. While Sinclair seems to be busy with something, the security officer introduces the couple as VIPs to see him. He begins to answer an unasked question and then tells the couple to get out of his mind. The couple introduce themselves as Bester and Kelsey, two Psi Cops who are charged with tracking down and capturing a rogue telepath. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Jason Ironheart is being shown his quarters. He accepts the terms and dismisses the woman showing him around. He then activates the computer, which begins telling him about the amenities that are available on the station, when suddenly Ironheart begins showing signs of discomfort and the room begins to shake. Back in Sinclair's office, Bester and Kelsey tell him about Ironheart. They explain that he is a P-10 that is working for intelligence. They believe that he went rogue to sell secrets to alien races that could jeopardize the entire Earth Alliance military structure. Talia, the telepath assigned to Babylon 5, arrives, and Bester and Kelsey ask her if she has had any contact with Ironheart. She tells them that she hasn't, but is informed that she will need to be scanned anyway. Talia resists, and Sinclair tries to intervene on her behalf, but Talia is required to submit under Psi Corp regulations. Talia appears to be in some discomfort while being scanned, but they confirm that she is telling the truth. Kelsey further tells Talia that she is to have no contact with Ironheart. After Talia leaves Sinclair's office, she finds Ironheart waiting for her in a corridor. She asks him why he is being pursued by Bester. Ironheart explains that he chose to volunteer for some Psi Corp experiments and was told that the experiments were to make telepaths stronger. The experiments went on for months and were very painful, but his powers were strengthened, and the experiments were actually designed to create telekinetic telepaths. He at first thought that they wanted the telekinetic abilities for large things, such as helping with construction, but he learned later that what they actually wanted was someone that could manipulate things on a molecular level and to act as assassins. He cannot be allowed to be captured, even if it means his death. In the command center, Garibaldi explains to Sinclair that he has learned that one of the ships that has docked was a stolen transport, and that it was from the last place that Ironheart was seen. Garibaldi says that he wants Ironheart found and off the station, and especially wants the Psi Cops off the station. He also mentions that there are about 50 quarters that need to be searched. Bester enters the command center as Garibaldi is leaving, and as they pass, Bester scans him and learns what Garibaldi just told Sinclair. Ironheart has a mind quake that shakes the entire station. Bester recognizes this phenomenon, and Sinclair and Garibaldi run out to find and confront Bester. Sinclair tells Bester that he should have warned him about the danger of Ironheart being on the station, and then asks what further danger there might be. Bester admits that he doesn't know. Ironheart stills his mindquake by concentrating. Bester and Kelsey decide that they will have to stop Ironheart by using a telepathic failsafe code to capture him. Ironheart has barricaded himself into his quarters. Talia makes contact with him and he allows her in to talk. Ironheart explains to Talia that he needs to rest. He further tells her that things on Earth are changing. Once the Psi Corp was under the control of the government, but recently they are getting more and more control and are actually starting to pull some of the strings in the government. He tells her that he is no longer who he was, and he is transforming, or as he describes it, he is becoming. Talia brings Sinclair to see Ironheart. Ironheart tries to explain to Sinclair that he is becoming and how his power is increasing. He will be dissected and studied if he is caught, and he says that there can be no more like him. He asks Sinclair to help him get off the station. Sinclair agrees and orders the way to the docking bay cleared. Bester and Kelsey guess what Sinclair is doing and meet Sinclair, Talia, and Ironheart in the corridor. Bester and Kelsey try to send the failsafe code, causing Ironheart to have another mindquake. Kelsey pulls her PPG to shoot Ironheart, and he tries to warn her. Then Kelsey disintegrates and vanishes. Bester gets a shot off, and Ironheart disables him. They finally get Ironheart into his ship and off the station. A large energy surge is detected near the station, and a large figure appears outside. It is Ironheart as he has become. He says goodbye to Talia and gives her a gift, and then tells Sinclair that he will see him in 1,000,000 years, and flies off to oblivion. Sinclair and Garibaldi meet with Bester. Bester says that reports will need to be filed, but Sinclair informs him that he will not get any backup from anyone on the station, and all of the records have been erased. At Garibaldi's urging, Bester departs. In her quarters alone, Talia tries her new powers of telekinesis by moving a coin across her desk, her gift from Ironheart. In a subplot, Katherine Sakai has been hired by a large Earth corporation to survey the planet Sigma 957. The planet is believed to be rich in a substance called Q40 that is used in the construction of jump gates. There is a shortage of Q40, and jump gate construction has fallen behind. Further, Sigma 957 is in a contested region of space, so she also needs Jakar's permission to go there for the survey. Jakar warns Katherine that it is a dangerous place and that she should consider changing her mind. He further says that no one on the station is exactly who they appear to be. She decides to go anyway, despite Jakar's advice, and departs the station. When she arrives at Sigma 957, she encounters a huge alien craft that renders her ship too short on power to escape a decaying orbit, or to even contact anyone for help. Just as she is about to hit the atmosphere, 2 Narn heavy fighters arrive on the scene and help Katherine return to Babylon 5. She thanks Jakar for helping her and asks why he did. He says that there was no reason for her to be killed, and that her death would have upset Sinclair unnecessarily. Finally, she asks what the ship was that she encountered at the planet. Jakar explains that some things are not knowable, and that there are races in the galaxy that are far older than humans, or any other races on the station, and to them, we are just as ants are to humans.
Initiating plot analysis.
Okay, thank you, Jim, for another summary.
Yes.
You know, we have in our show prep, we try to come up with 3 points of discussion, and you know what? It really looks like we've got 2 of the same 3.
Yes. Which amazes me, because when we get this ready, we have rule number 1: we do not discuss the show before we discuss the show. So
we had to establish that, folks, because what would happen is we'd get talking, or we'd get typing, texting, and one of us would be like, "Oh, crud, why aren't we recording this?"
Yes, we should be recording it.
So now we record everything.
Yes. So, yeah, we are both of our point number 1s were the Katherine and Jakar story.
Absolutely true.
Yes.
That was oh, how do I want to say it? That was the story that took Jakar, for me at least, that took Jakar from being an annoying piece of slime, petty troublemaker, to, okay, there's some real depth to this character here that's going to be interesting to see develop.
Yeah, I have to agree. We get a glimpse into his more thoughtful side and the philosophical future that lies ahead of him.
Yeah, and it's very deep, and it's really one of the more rewarding characters to watch develop in a lot of ways.
Yes. Well, there was one point there in the story where he called back to Narn to get the heavy fighter that was heavily armed, and it seemed, it was like, why is he doing this? Is he going to have her killed or what? You didn't really know which direction he was going.
I wasn't thinking he was going to have her killed, but more of a chase her away, blockade her from where she was trying to go.
Okay.
But I sure as heck didn't expect, he knew something was going to go south, so he sent a rescue mission.
Yeah, he anticipated well ahead of time what was going to happen.
And he took steps to address it.
Yes,
and that actually goes to one of your other points. No one here is exactly what he appears.
Yes.
Why did that one stick out for you?
Well, G'Kar notices what's going on with everybody. He can see, oh gosh, how do I put this? Not really sure. He mentions Sinclair is not what he seems to be. Well, those of us that have watched the show, we know what that's about. Londo isn't what he appears to be. Londo seems to be more of an aristocrat who is, trying to put on the airs, but he is actually quite a deep-feeling human being, Centauri being. Everybody has their story. Talia is not who she appears to be.
Understatement of the year.
Yes, and of course the Psi Corp, who knows what their agenda is at this point.
Mm-hmm. You just gave a perfect segue to our other common point, and that is the introduction of the Psi Corp.
Ah, yes. Wonderful Mr. Bester.
Which is actually my third point. I actually separated Bester from the Psi Corp.
Ah.
So let's go ahead and talk about the Psi Corp first, actually.
Okay.
There's a lot to say about it. I mean, the reality is this is our first introduction to the Psi Corp. And I don't mean Talia commercial telepaths. I mean the real Psi Corp.
Yeah, the more powerful ones.
What's happening on the inside. Psi Corp, well, we see that through the perspective of the Psychops.
Mm-hmm.
And there, shall we say, the rules that Talia has to keep as far as digging into people's minds, they've got a little bit more leeway in that regard.
Or they at least they take more leeway.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to have a rule book other than what is good for them is good for everybody.
Yeah, the 10 commandments are more like the 10 suggestions.
Yeah. But you can see they have quite a bit of power going on, especially when Jason explains what the Psi Corp had done to him and what they were attempting to do.
Exactly. In fact, as he points it out, the Corps is dedicated to control.
Yes.
Not just control of telepaths, but control of everything. He points out that the Psi Corp that's really pulling the strings on Earth, and that they have their own agenda.
Yes.
And as all this is revealed, one of the things that I think is important to note is this is where we first see Talia's doubts about the Corps. Remember when she was talking to Ivanova, earlier in this series,
mm-hmm.
She was very positive, very up and up, very chipper about the Corps and all the good it does. And,
Yes.
Ivanova's experience had to be an accident or a footnote or just a very, very rare exception.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Now she starts to see a little bit of Susan's side.
Yeah. At least the surface Talia.
At least the surface Talia. I'm going to make sure we stay far away from that discussion for this.
Okay.
I know we're open to having spoilers, but it's that's when I want to hang on for, because I do know there are some people listening who haven't watched. What else do we learn about Psi Corp and telepathy here?
Well, they can communicate with each other through telepathy. They can also communicate to non-telepaths through telepathy.
If you're a P12.
Yeah.
If you're a P12. It's not every telepath that can do that.
Yeah, because when Bester and Kelsey first came on the station, they went to the security guy and thought to him what they wanted. They didn't even, nobody spoke out loud except for the mundane, as they call them. And then as Bester walked into Sinclair's office, he communicated to him telepathically, and then later on, he read Garibaldi's mind as they passed by.
Now, I know you had mentioned that as one of your dislikes about the way it was used or not used, or was used or not used in some of the situations. I think to some degree they're doing that as especially just coming on the station.
Yes.
More than anything else to make an impression, the fear factor. One of the things that the Psi cops use and use effectively is fear. And we actually see that further down the road. Remember, there's a point in the future where Bester is interrogating someone. And he's just pretending that he's actually scanning him. And when Garibaldi confronts him on it, he actually comments about how he was just playing the guy's fears.
Yes.
So I think there's definitely a part of that. And then there's other cases where we see telepaths sending messages or sending triggers to non-telepath minds as well. At least more powerful telepaths doing such.
Well, and then there was the scene where Bester and Kelsey scanned Talia to find out if she had had any contact with Ironheart recently. What a well-played scene that was.
Yeah. The part I loved the most about it was the way the scene ended. It was Susan that ran to Talia's aid. She was the one that got her, helped her, gave her water. And it wasn't an accident. Straczynski did that intentionally. So he's laying the initial groundwork for that friendship to eventually bloom.
Yes.
And then, as usual, he kicks Susan in the gut.
Yeah.
Susan's line, oh my gosh, regarding the calculated risks.
Oh, yes.
So what do you do for pleasure? Juggle babies over a fire pit? Oops, there goes another calculated risk.
Yes.
I was actually looking for audio of that one, and I couldn't find it. That counts as our Ivanova quote of the day.
The Ivanovism of the for this episode.
Other things we've learned about telepaths is that it's constant background noise as far as telepaths in the general public. It's like being in a crowded room hearing everyone talk, but inside your head. And part of the training is to learn to not pay attention to that.
Yeah, can you imagine how that would be?
No, it would be maddening.
No. But, I guess a person could get used to it. I've been in situations at parties where there's large crowds where I'm talking to somebody sitting directly across from me. Lots of background noise, but I still focus on what they're saying, and it comes through just very well. A person can do it.
The way I imagine it is, someone who had been deaf, the cases where they're able to repair it with electronically. It's like that person who had been deaf and can suddenly hear again. And, there's definitely cases of those people having psychological problems just from being overwhelmed by the sensory input.
Yes.
So I guess in one regard, they've always had it. So they wouldn't know what the silence is like.
True.
Now, one thing, though, they learn to block a lot of that out. What they don't necessarily have a reflex ability to block out are some of the really strong emotions or really strong thoughts. We get one very interesting demonstration of that in the lift tube.
Yes.
I think that was something that you had mentioned. I'll go ahead and let you relate that story.
Yeah. Well, Talia and her client get into the lift tube, and Garibaldi happens to be in there already, and he's standing behind Talia and admiring her hiney. She picks up on
which has been a running gag all season.
Yeah, and she picks up on it and gives him a pretty good elbow in the gut, and walks out, and Garibaldi comes halfway out of the elevator and says, "I think I'm in love."
Now, you do know the two ended up married for a short while.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Andrea Thompson and Jerry Doyle were married. It didn't last very long, but they did end up married.
Oh.
And I think another spot where we see that strong emotion, I don't know if that was just Bester being Bester or if Garibaldi was just thinking it so strongly. Because, I mean, it was a case of almost hate at first sight between those two.
Oh, yeah. I don't think Bester would have had to try very hard to find out what Garibaldi was thinking.
Yeah, he may not have necessarily been eavesdropping because Garibaldi's opinion was so strong.
Yeah.
But the line, anatomically impossible, Mr. Garibaldi, that
opens a lot of doors, doesn't it?
It defines the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It really defines the relationship. I will say this, though. Obviously, what they're working on is a classified project, not just within the Psi Corp, but in general.
Yes.
And in spite of that, throughout the episode, you know, the Psychops are actually being rather upfront about the whole thing. They're telling as much. They're telling as much as they can. I mean, Bester does come clean with more details for Sinclair when when Sinclair confronts him on it. Obviously, he's going to spin it to make the Corps look its best.
Right.
But the real thing, the really ick thing about it is they're just so darn nasty and unpleasant about what they reveal and what they let out. There's definitely that arrogant superiority in their attitudes.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, and of course this comes out later in the series, more or less, but they think of the non-telepaths as mundanes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. There's nothing special about people who are not telepathic. They really don't count for very much. They're just fodder to be moved around on the chessboard, more or less.
The mundanes are being evolved out.
Yeah.
And yeah, that absolutely is something that we'll be seeing and exploring a lot more, especially in season 4.
Yes, quite
because
in depth.
That story comes to the head there, and it also is a part of season 5.
Mm-hmm.
One of the more criticized parts of season 5, but still a big part of season 5.
Well, and then there's the Narn dilemma.
And the Narn dilemma, which we've already been introduced to.
Yes.
It's sort of the excuse for Jakar's peculiar taste in human women, I think was how it was phrased once.
Yes.
Now, what is bringing the Psychops to Babylon 5 in this case? I think we've already mentioned the name Jason Ironheart a couple of times.
Yes.
And
who is being portrayed as a rogue telepath, someone who has escaped.
Technically true.
Yeah, and is a dangerous person, but not
technically true.
Right, all that is technically true, but for all these reasons, he was created by the Psi Corp. So, in my mind, at least, they're doing more of a cover-up job here than anything else.
Right. Jason Ironheart was Talia's trainer. He was originally a P-10, mm-hmm. and he transferred to the military for a special project.
Yes.
Now, when they say the military, they're not necessarily telling us whether it's strictly standard military or if it's a Psi Corp unit of the military.
Yeah, Earth Force or Psi Corp, yeah.
Right. Because, like Black Omega Squadron, that was the Psi Corp covert military unit. We'll be seeing Bester a few times in a Black Omega Star Fury.
Yes.
But yeah, they are trying to militarize telepathy and to create a stable telekinetic.
And the reason that Ironheart went along with this is because he thought they wanted him to help with large construction projects.
Right.
And actually what they didn't want is they didn't care about the macro telekinesis abilities, but the micro telekinesis abilities.
Yes, that's right. You know, everything else I've seen with any sort of telekinesis, whether it's sci-fi and you're talking psionic capabilities, or if you're, or Star Wars, the Force, or if you're talking magic in the fantasy genres, they're always shoving around big stuff. Darth Vader's throwing big pipes at Luke.
Oh yeah. Well, for crying out loud, Yoda pulled that whole X-wing right out of the swamp.
Out of the swamp. I love the way Straczynski takes this approach. No, that's not the real danger of telekinesis.
Yeah. And it's
pinch off the carotid artery.
Yeah, it's very scary when you think about it on, telekinesis on a molecular or an even atomic level would be, it would be the perfect crime.
And in Jason's case, they just succeeded so far beyond any imagined hope of success. I mean, he wasn't just in control of matter. He could control energy.
Yeah, and quite possibly time also.
I remember having heard that mentioned or theorized, but that's something we'll never get the answer for.
No.
Basically, Straczynski made it real clear Ironheart would never be back.
Right.
Too much power. I mean, basically, how do I put it? I guess Daniel Jackson wasn't the first human to ascend. His becoming.
Yeah.
And that's sorry. That folks, that was one of my. That's the part that annoyed me about Jason.
We'll get there.
Becoming.
Yeah. No, Straczynski said he didn't want anyone else like Jason. He said, Jason Ironheart will not be seen again, insofar as I know. I don't like beings with that much power running around the plot line.
Exactly. Exactly. It wasn't necessary. Though it's interesting, his gift to Talia, what we see initially is the telekinesis, but it's more. It's much more. She's no longer just a P5. That much is clear. And it'll become more clear as we progress through the season.
Now, this brings up a question in my mind, okay? We know what happens with Talia down the road.
Correct.
Was she already pre-programmed before she was a student of Jason Ironheart's?
Well, in this case, you got to remember this was one of Straczynski's trapdoors. She had left the series, and much of the Talia story is moved to Lita when Pat Tallman returns, because Pat became available.
Okay.
So it fits very well. I haven't seen any comment on Straczynski as far as when that would have happened. I would guess, and this is pure speculation on my part, and fans, if you know a detail, if you know a specific, please let us know, and we'll include it on one of our feedback episodes.
Yes.
But my theory on this is that she would have been programmed prior to being assigned to Babylon 5.
Okay.
After her training. And you know what? I'm thinking about this in retrospect. Oh my, I'm going to have to, I may have to dig some of my, I'm going to have to dig some of my comics out of storage. There might have been something in the comics about this, but I am honestly not sure on this one.
Okay.
Jason Ironheart. Okay. Like I said, he's the one who had trained Talia. He's the one that they had militarized, basically.
Right. And then he got more powerful than anybody expected and began to transfigure and become. Which gets back to my little Stargate.
Actually, that needs to be corrected. Stargate's ascended beings were more Babylon 5-ish than the other way around, because Babylon 5 predated them by quite a few years.
Okay, now, Yeah, you're way off base with me. I have no idea what happened, and I've never watched Stargate.
All right, folks, this is a Babylon 5 show, but I've got to throw in a pitch for Stargate. I hated the movie. I poo-pooed the series for years and years and years. I wasn't going to waste my time on a series based on a movie that I thought was that poor. The movie is not like the series. The series is great. And I did a summer binge watch, or actually I did a winter binge watch of SG-1, and I'm wrapping up Atlantis now. But like you said, he is becoming. And, I guess the part that annoys me about Jason, not the actor, but the character, is he's just a little bit on the drama queen side.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
It was not an accident. Anthea, and that's my wife, folks, and she's the voice of our show, so to speak. Anthea put it this way: he is exactly Talia's type.
Okay.
And no, it makes sense because Talia can. I love the character, but there's times that she could drift into a little bit of dramatics herself.
Yes, that's very true. I don't know. The character Jason was well acted, and I'm sure he acted it the way it was written because nobody would have allowed it not to be. But it was like, oh, hey, I know. You remember Lon Chaney? Lon Chaney Jr. is the Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
Who would go into the jail and please lock me up, please lock me up. You're not gonna like what's gonna happen. It was very melodramatic. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Melodramatic.
Exactly, but it's the way it's written.
Yes.
Frankly, you've heard me complain, but the reality is this episode would not have been as good any other way.
Okay.
If he was Mr. Tough Guy, if he came in feeling more like Mace Windu than Luke Skywalker,
yeah, that would have never
it
worked.
would never have worked. It would never have worked.
No. Now, it was played the way it was supposed to be. I guess, as you said, the becoming. What are we becoming?
Well, we find out. We actually do find out.
Okay.
Finale of season 4.
Oh, okay.
That's where we see humans in an encounter suit in 1,000,000 years.
Okay.
So it just took 1,000,000 years for the rest of us to catch up with him, basically.
I just never made that connection.
Leave the body behind, become energy.
I'm glad I have you to do the heavy lifting.
Oh, gosh. No, that's... believe me, quick history here. Babylon 5, and we mentioned this probably in the Gathering discussion, maybe, but I know we mentioned it in the Sci-Fi Diner hijack. One of the things that was really unique about Babylon 5 was the extent and degree to which the creators and the writers and even the actors were accessible to the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not hard. It's not that hard to make the jump when you're sitting. You're familiar. You remember what Usenet? Well, actually, still around. You remember Usenet by chance?
I remember hearing about it, but I didn't have much to do with it.
Think of it as a distributed, shared discussion board. And rec.arts.tv.babylon5 and rec.arts.tv.babylon5.moderated. And that's the one Straczynski spent a lot of time on.
Oh.
Well, he actually originally did a lot of on the old Genie service originally. But, you pick up, there's a lot of those little details that come out that would get popped out there.
Ah.
And, of course, there's the classic Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5, which was really the first site of its kind for fan shows.
Mm-hmm.
If you were following along on those venues, it's like not that big of a deal to check out. The only amazing thing is you have this knack of tossing out those little key words that trigger a memory in my head from 20 years ago. So, anyway, enough reminiscing.
Yes.
Ironheart in the militarization, one of the things that always, and this is getting in, if you don't mind me jumping ahead to one of my dislikes. 1 in 1,000 humans are teeps, telepaths. 1 in 10,000 of the telepaths are telekinetics. All right, at least where telepaths are concerned. And this is, I actually would almost call this a plot hole. That means you're talking about 6 million telepaths?
Well,
that's a lot of telepaths.
Well, let's think about this now. They didn't say at what levels the telepaths would be. If you recall, for instance,
but even Ivanova's mother.
Ivanova's mother was not a strong telepath, but she was strong enough that she either had to go to Psi Corp or she had to take the drugs to suppress her abilities. Okay, so, and then if you think about, we have almost 7 billion people on 7 billion with a B people on this planet now. Okay, what is the population of the galaxy going to be
for humans
at that time?
Okay, well, let's make 10 billion, but that's still an awful. I mean, yeah, it's distributed, it's watered down across the population, but that's still a lot of telepaths.
Yeah, well, I think it's plausible, actually.
That's also somewhere between 300 and 600 sane telekinetics. If they were trying that hard to make a stable telekinetic, you would have thought they would have worked through some of those. And remember, Psi Corp has that fairly aggressive breeding program, non-voluntary breeding program, I might add. So, it just, is it a plot hole, or is this something being done in addition to? For something like Babylon 5, you would expect there to be a lot more than one telepath there, just at that ratio.
Yeah, depending on what...
250,000?
Yeah, depending on what levels we're talking.
But anyway, I don't want to nitpick. I don't want to nitpick on something that's really like I said, one of the great episodes. Anything else on the Psi Corp or Ironheart before we turn to the other part of the story?
Not anymore, no. I think we've covered that.
Except that a punch in the jaw is a good way to distract a telepath.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, no, wait a minute. We did have something that it was interesting that they had implanted in Ironheart a code.
A shutdown code,
shutdown code, and they were trying to use that on him, and they underestimated his powers.
Drastically underestimated.
Yeah, thinking that they would be able to get line of sight and shut him down, but he had just become way too powerful at that point.
He had pretty much taken out Kelsey, and his struggle was to not take out Bester and or blow up the entire station as a whole in the process.
The whole station.
So it wasn't a matter of gee, can they shut him down? It was more a matter of how do I limit the damage from what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing. One more thing. There was something from one of Joe Straczynski's favorite shows that became sort of a trademark of Bester's.
We can't forget and it is one of my favorite shows. It was the little salute that Bester gave, and be seeing you. However, okay, when Patrick McGowan did that on the prisoner, he would put his forefinger and thumb together in front of his eye, be seeing you. Bester put it next to his temple and said, be seeing you. And so that was a little more sinister in that case than...
I get it.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't remember that. It has been 30 years since I've seen The Prisoner.
Oh, I watched it last summer.
Shamefully, I've never seen the entire series beginning to end.
It's interesting. It's bizarre. It's out there. It's but
British.
yeah, there was always that "be seeing you."
That was very much a tip to the prisoner that apparently anyone who knows that show couldn't miss.
Oh yeah, I caught that immediately.
We couldn't go through without mentioning that.
No.
The second part of the story, I think, was as good as the first, and it really had one of the most moving moments for me.
Yeah.
In it. One of the most dramatic moments.
Well,
that was the whole Sigma 957.
Yeah, and as abbreviated as it was, it had a lot of impact.
Mm-hmm.
Great deal of impact.
What's good is we see that Katherine is moving up in the world.
Yeah.
Her big hit from a few episodes ago has paid off. She's now getting a contract from Universal Terraform, one of the megacorps,
Yep.
to go out and do a survey.
Yeah, to get materials to build jump gates.
And in this case, there's a possible planet near Sigma 957. The problem is the Narn built that jump gate, and though the region's considered contested, according to JMS, the Narns technically have first rights. You need their permission to go and poach on that planet.
Yes. But the Narns know that something there is going on, and it may be dangerous.
According to Jakar, as he puts it, Sigma 957 is a strange place. And we learn much more about that in Season 3 and Season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And as you had said, he called for a military response to Sakai's mission.
Yes.
So that actually raised one of the huge questions for the show. And that was, who are the walkers of 957? You know, he referred to them as those who walk there. They became known as the walkers of Sigma 957.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, at one point, I remember even a question being that thing that showed up.
Yes.
Whatever it was big.
Mm-hmm.
Was that just a ship, or was that an entity?
You know, when they first showed it, at the very first glimpse of that, it resembled shadow technology.
Which we haven't been introduced to yet.
Right. But it did. It looked like it had the tendrils of a shadow vessel. Now, I'm not saying that they were shadows.
Oh, no. And in fact, we find out that's not the case at all.
But they definitely gave me the impression that the ship was biotechnologically engineered.
Yeah, it seemed clear there was it looked like some sort of organic technology.
Mm-hmm.
But was it a ship, or was it just some sort of organic entity?
I don't know.
That thrived in space. And obviously we kind of slipped it there, referring to it as a ship. We do find out.
Yeah.
We do find out exactly what they are. But that's Season 3 and Season 4. A little further down the road.
But Katherine doesn't know what it is.
No.
And
nor does Jakar.
No. And Jakar eloquently explains to Katherine what in his mind is happening.
And I think that's probably one of the most powerful moments of the episode. And okay, this is a case where I'm not even going to try and quote it. Andreas Katsulas is an amazing actor.
Oh, yes.
And this quote of his, this quote can only be done best by him. So, folks, give you a chance to listen.
Ambassador, while I was out there, I saw something. What was it?
What is this?
An ant.
Ant?
So much gets shipped up from Earth on commercial transports, it's hard to keep them out.
Yeah, I have just picked it up on the tip of my glove. If I put it down again, and it asks another ant, what was that? How would it explain? There are things in the universe billions of years older than either of our races. They are vast, timeless, and if they are aware of us at all, it is as little more than ants, and we have as much chance of communicating with them as an ant has with us. We know. We've tried. And we've learned that we can either stay out from underfoot or be stepped on.
That's it? That's all you know?
Yes. They are a mystery. And I am both terrified and reassured to know that there are still wonders in the universe, that we have not yet explained everything. Whatever they are, Miss Sakai, they walk near Sigma 957. And they must walk there alone.
Had to let that English horn solo play. Anthony would have killed me if I didn't. And then it closes with that close-up of the ant on that flower.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful acting.
Yes.
It was beautiful cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
And it really gives you a glimpse of the true power and the true depth of the story.
Yeah.
Of what's coming.
And how thoughtful Jakar actually can be.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here. In some ways, this is our first true introduction to Jakar.
I'd go along with that.
We get away from some of the pettiness. We get away from the comic interactions between him and Londo.
Mm-hmm.
And we see some amazing depth of character.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're going to get plenty of the other as well, but this is the first hint of where the character's really going, I think.
Yeah, and he gets very deep.
Yeah. Folks, this is one where I would really love to get some feedback or some thoughts on. This really is one of my favorite, and you're going to probably hear me say this more than once, but this is one of my favorite spots. This is one of the pieces of season 1 that really moved me.
Mm-hmm.
Any particular other likes or thoughts that you want to bring up?
Well, I'll tell you what. Another question I had was when Jason has his second mind quake, Kelsey says out loud to Bester, "Mind quake," and if revealing what's going on with Ironheart is supposed to be so much of a secret, why would they say something like that out loud? Why not think it to each other? Nobody else in the area would pick it up except for Ironheart and Talia.
I think that goes back to my theory originally. It takes more effort to communicate directly, telepathically. And I'm just hypothesizing. I'm just coming up with almost, retconning reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the initial telepathic conversation was more of making an impression, for example. And let's face it, we've been talking thousands and thousands of years longer than we've been thinking thoughts to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Then, of course, there's the absolutely dead practical fact of, well, they might be able to talk mind to mind, but you and I wouldn't be able to hear them.
Yeah, that's very true. We wouldn't know what they were talking about.
And, that voiceover shtick that you see in all the other sci-fi, thinking back on this, I am so glad they didn't do that. When the telepaths were talking to each other, talking to the people, you didn't hear some voiceover of what they were saying to the other character.
Yeah.
It was nothing.
Yeah.
And you had to imply what they were saying by the other person's response.
Right.
That telepath shtick has just been, I think, too overdone in the genre. So in that respect, I'm glad they didn't.
Okay. Go along with that.
That's just my own reckoning, hypothesizing there. And one thing else that I would like to, since we're nearing the wrap up, Straczynski's comments. There's one comment that I really liked in my prep regarding my favorite thing about this episode is that when all is said and done, nobody knows anything.
Mm-hmm.
Bester doesn't know what Ironheart is turning into. Sinclair doesn't know if Ironheart was really telling the truth or not. Nobody knows where Ironheart went. Nobody knows what the alien ship is, who they were. The closest I can come to is to compare it with writing a mystery novel without revealing the killer, but without frustrating anyone in the process because there is closure.
Mm-hmm.
That's according to Straczynski. And you know what? He's right.
Yeah. Well, it reinforces what G'Kar said, that nobody is
Yes.
what they seem, and we don't know what they are yet.
And there's mysteries out there.
Yes.
And that's both reason to be afraid and reason to have hope. Now, one more thing. Something to watch for. And if you haven't seen this, you might want to go back and look at it again.
Okay.
Watch for Bester's left hand.
Okay.
Watch for Bester's left hand.
Now, I've been beating myself over the head with this now all afternoon, trying to rattle my brain and figure out what it is you mean. Now, I know you're not going to tell me.
That is the only thing I'm going to say about it. I'm not answering this tonight. In fact, I'm not going to answer this one. I'm going to leave this for our fans to answer. And if you don't have it figured out tonight, I'll bring it up again the next time we have Bester on.
Okay.
Watch his left hand. And if anyone can tell me the backstory, send in your answer. It'll definitely make the top of the feedback episodes.
Well, I'll have to go back and look at that and see if I can pick up on it.
Uh-huh. Well, Jim, I think we've got this one pretty well wrapped.
I believe you're right.
So, if they want to get hold of us, what do you think? What's the best way?
Well, my answer to that would be Facebook would be really good. Our Babylon Project podcast page on Facebook. You can friend us there. Get right on
Email.
Yeah, you can send us email at the Babylon Project Podcast @gmail.com, or you can even feedback to us on our WordPress page, the Babylon Project Podcast.wordpress.com.
And as far as the email is concerned, you can send us typed or you can send us MP3. Actually, you can send us pretty much any format you want. I have the tools to decode just about anything.
Yeah.
So voice feedback is just as welcome as written feedback. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but what we'll do with the feedback is probably just collect them together from the various sources into a feedback episode.
Mm-hmm.
So we really do want your voices to be heard, not just to let us know how good or how bad we're doing, but also to share with the rest of the Babylon 5 fandom.
Yeah, we don't know everything. We would love input.
Absolutely, absolutely, which is probably my big overused word. Well, Jim, I think we got a wrap.
Yeah. Did we have a boom today?
No boom today, boom tomorrow.
There always seems to be
There's
a boom
always a boom
tomorrow, doesn't there?
Tomorrow. Yep. Good night, folks.
All right, good night.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast @gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.